Okay, let's get started then. I'll admit more people as they come in, but first of all, a big warm welcome to everybody that's coming to watch today's webinar. I recognise some familiar names there. Some of the ambassadors for the Young Trustees Movement are also in the room, so hello, good evening. It's really nice to see you on this very dreary, wet day. However, I'm pleased the rain has come and cooled the temperature down a bit because I haven't slept for about a week. Anyway, today I am joined by Amy, one of the Young Trustee Ambassadors, and Colette, who works for an organisation linking up potential trustees with organisations that are looking for trustees. But I won't say any more about them. I'll ask Amy to introduce herself in just a moment. Classic rules as last times. If you have a question, please type in the chat box that you have a question and I'll come and unmute you. If you would rather me read out the question for you, then just send me a private message in the chat room and I will do that. To do that, click on the chat and then change the blue highlighted button to my name, which is Leon Ward, and then that message will be sent to me only. As usual, a recording of this webinar will be uploaded tomorrow, so you'll be able to look back and share it far and wide. So, Amy, let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah, so I'm Amy, I'm 26, and so my day job, I work at the Sheffield College doing student voice coordinator. So I get to look after the student reps and the student union and make sure they get to have a say on their education. I'm a trustee for Voluntary Action Sheffield. I've been there for about a year and a half, and before that I was a governor at the college.
Great, thank you. And Colette, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Colette Harrison and I'm based up in Durham. I've worked in the voluntary sector now for 20 years, almost exactly. I first became a trustee when I was 22 and I've had 2 national chairships and trusteeship is a really important part of my life. I currently work for Community Foundation in Tyne, Northumberland, and my role is to recruit on behalf of charities to their trustee boards and to support people in their first trustee role with local charities.
Great, thank you. And the topic for today is how to sell your skills and abilities despite never having been a trustee before. But before we get to that, I know Amy has just come straight from a board meeting, and I think it was your first digital board meeting. Tell us how it went.
It was all right. It's still going on, actually. I had to bounce out early to come to this, but they were very happy for that to happen. It was good. It was facilitated well. Not too many technical difficulties, which is always good. Going over a little bit of time, which normally doesn't happen. But no, yeah, on the whole, good, yeah.
The reason I ask is because, of course, there'll be people watching this who are aspiring trustees, and during the current climate, their recruitment process, or indeed their first induction or first board, might actually be done online too. And there's just some nuances there around being inducted or going to your first meeting like that. But I had my first digital meeting yesterday too, and that went quite well. We finished 20 minutes early, which is unheard of. But actually, I think people just felt like they should only speak when they actually had something of value to say, because it meant unmuting and faffing around with the tech, whereas normally in a room they can just say whatever they want and keep going on. So I found it a really, really interesting experience. But I want to kick off with a what some people might consider a pretty basic question, but it's pretty broad. And the question is, what skills do you think people need to be a trustee? And if you can bring in all types of skills, because there'll be people out there who are at the very start of their executive day job career who might have done things as younger people in the voluntary sector, but actually what are the hard and soft things that you need to bring to a boardroom? We'll start with Amy.
Yeah, so I think hard and soft skills are really important to define as well. So for me, going into my trusteeship, I'd literally just started my career. So I'm an apprentice. So actually, if you think about it in that way, I hadn't really started my day job, but actually was on my educational journey. And so I don't think I had that many hard skills, but actually I'd been the president of a students' union. I'd been involved in student politics for a while. So I knew how to talk, I knew how to hold a room, I knew how to kind of talk about what drives me and what pushes me to do things. And actually, I think a lot of that is the reason I was able to get my trusteeship. So really concentrating on actually, this is what I've done and this is how actually I can help that trustee board to do this as well, was really helpful. And I think, again, the hard skill stuff comes from experience. So if you've been a volunteer in a specific capacity, then that's where you build those skills. And actually being able to understand what skills you've built is really important to be able to then showcase them.
So you said there that you were an apprentice, but you were also president of a students' union. What was the educational journey? Because most people that have been SU presidents don't then do an apprenticeship. So just for people's background knowledge, what was the journey to date?
Yeah, so I was the president at FE College. So I've never been to university. So I was going through my studies, then became president for 2 years, and then didn't really know what I wanted to do after that. But an apprenticeship came up, kind of doing the job I was doing, but not political. And I was like, actually, that's where I see myself, being able to help other people have that stage and have that platform. So then it was an apprenticeship just because of the kind of entry level that I had. Like I didn't have a degree, so I couldn't have gone into like a management position within that organisation.
So you have been developing a board career whilst not having a degree, which is an important message to send out there, because trustees typically are white, male and old, but also middle class. And one thing that I don't think comes up very often when talking about diversity in the charity sector is the class element, and the fact that lots of people come to the board having gone through a very particular career route, which is they've been to uni and then they enter a professional career. When you were on your board previously, were there other FE students around the table as well, or were you the only sort of student rep?
So there were, for the first year of that, there was 2. So we normally have 2 student governors in the governing body of the college. The second year, unfortunately, we didn't fill that position, so it was just me, but I'd kind of already built that kind of bit of knowledge base, but it was very lonely.
Yeah.
The majority of the people around the table were old enough to be my grandparents. So yeah.
And we've covered in previous webinars, people tuning in for the first time, actually the importance of having a second younger trustee there, or a mentor at least, as a friendly face in the boardroom. But Colette, if I can bring you in on that first question, what skills do you think people need to be a trustee? And I know you have previous experience of being a chair as well. So if you could weave in your what you used to look for in trustees as a chair recruiting, that would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. I completely agree with what's been said just there by Amy. And I think for me, it's just the ability to ask questions and possibly sort of the confidence to ask questions. I think that's as important, if not more important sometimes, than specific skills, and a really powerful way to make an impact as a new trustee. If you have all the same types of people being on the same type of board, you won't have very dynamic conversations and discussions. So just a new perspective and someone who'll ask something that's maybe never been asked before, or in that way, that's a hugely valuable skill to bring. And also, I think often you can be very close to an issue. So sometimes being involved with a charity that you might never have considered being part of can be a really big sort of a benefit, really. If you're too close to an issue, sometimes it's hard to be objective when you need to be. So I think, yeah, and as a chair, I very much looked for people with real passion, people who genuinely cared, but also people with the skills that were filling gaps among the rest of the board members. So specific skills, drive, and the confidence, sort of the nerve to actually ask possibly difficult questions sometimes.
And so there'll be, for when people apply for trusteeship and they talk about the motivation of why they wanted to apply for the role, often it's because they've got lived experience of the services that the charity delivers. So how do you sort of circle the square there around not being too close to an issue to be able to give it a very limited perspective? What would your tips be as people that have had experience of that?
I think obviously sort of not a generalisation, so many people who have that lived experience would be able to be very sort of professional and distanced from the issues when it can become personal. I think just somebody who has that willingness to learn, someone who comes with a very specific skill might be very useful in terms of having a clear focus on the board. And also there's an opportunity to say, actually, I have all of this experience, but my reason for being part of this board is to learn about this, or to demonstrate this specific skill. So I think that's where the harder skills could come into play, to really maintain focus on the strategy.
Thanks. Amy, anything you want to add?
No, yeah, I just agree. I was just nodding away.
Good.
Just people that aren't necessarily, I have it on speaker view, so I see Colette's face big and you're small in the corner, so he has to switch. So now there will be other people watching this, some people watching this back who are at the very start of their trustee journey, i.e. this webinar might be the very first thing they have looked at to venture into the world of trusteeship. And they might be sat there wondering, what on earth do I have to offer? What would you say to those people, starting with Amy?
I think everyone's got something to offer, I think is the key thing that I'd say. I think it's about knowing, again, I think this webinar should help that, but knowing how to showcase that, and actually how to like hone in on the skills and actually build on them to make sure that you are able to showcase them in the way that people are looking for when they are appointing trustees. Like I've said, in my day job, I help people have a say on their education. And the organisation that I applied for a trustee at is a membership organisation. So they want to hear what their members are saying. And they have struggled to do that in the past. And actually now, because of the way I was able to be like, well, actually, I do it with individuals and students. This is how you could potentially do it with organisations. Here's my knowledge, here's my skills. They've then be able to improve the way they're doing that. So I think it's being able to take your skills and transfer into what the trustee board need.
And when you applied for your role, did you make that pretty clear in the sort of covering letter that that's what you thought you would bring to the job?
So I didn't have a covering letter, I did an application, and then was invited to an interview, and that's where I kind of made that really clear of this is what I want to bring and this is what I have to offer, and this is what I can't offer, but yeah.
Yeah, there's something there about, being realistic about what you are bringing to a board so that their expectations are met. Colette, anything you would add to that?
I know, sort of in preparing for this, I was asked to suggest some top tips, and exactly sort of what Amy has actually said there about sort of being realistic. If a board is asking for very specific skills that you don't have, then sort of respect the fact that they're looking for something very specific in the way that you would look for a job advert. And I guess just kind of the idea of, if you're doing something new, don't feel like any anxieties that you may have are because you are a young trustee or a first-time trustee. It's more that you're doing something for the very first time, and in anyone doing something new needs some kind of support. So I'm not sure that quite sort of answers or sort of complements the question, but just very much around sort of just being confident in what you do bring, but being respectful to the organisation in terms of what they're actually needing.
Okay, so I'm going to bounce back to Amy with the follow-up question, which is for those people watching this for the first time, or who are taking the very first steps into looking into trusteeship, who may have never actually applied for a job before or applied for a position on a board or anything like that before. This could be their very first experience of applying for something too. How do you as an individual reflect and evaluate the skills that you have to offer before you apply for a role like that? Amy, how have you done that before going for things?
So I think for me, it's actually really helped me do my apprenticeship, and I know not everyone's on one or can get on one, but part of one of the units we were doing, we're on a skills audit, which I'd never really done before. I'd answered like, this is what I think I'm good at and this is what I'm not very good at, but I had to do one, and actually it made me really realise like, these are the skills I have and these are the gaps that I can fill. And like, you can get a skills audit like template online really easily. So I think doing that, and yeah, I think talking to people. So having conversations, like if you're in education with your tutors, and actually looking at the work you're doing and saying like, actually, what skills do you think I'm missing here? Because I think everyone has something to learn from like those around us, like family members, like managers or team members in work, or like educators. I think those people play like pivotal parts in actually helping us develop.
Great. Colette, anything to add?
No, I certainly agree with Amy about that, and also I guess about sort of motivations, sort of thinking about what is it that makes you want to be a trustee, or what is it that sort of excited you about the idea of being a trustee. And certainly when I was in my first chairing role, I was attracted by the organisation because they were a national organisation rather than a regional organisation. And the professional role I had then limited me to the Northeast, and I wanted to get some experience more broadly than that. So I did it for quite selfish reasons, really. It was an organisation I cared about, but for me, the motivation was to develop my skills and my networks, and also because at that point there wasn't representation from the Northeast on a national board, and I wanted to change that. So certainly, sort of, I was realistic about the skills that I brought, but I was very aware that my motivation was about professional development.
And for those of you that have never watched it, that have never been on a board before, boards typically, or should, best practices for boards to run skills audits once you're at the table to assess the skills that are around the board table, to work out who do we need around the table to allow us to meet the ambitions that we want to meet. And I think that's a really good starting place. If you are looking at any organisation and thinking, I would really like to be a trustee for that organisation, I've read their advert, and in your covering letter or in your application or video or whatever that they ask you to submit, what you need to do is to be able to identify which of your skills will help the organisation meet the ambition that they've set out. Amy spoke there about a template skills audit that you can find online. Reach Volunteering, I'm just showing my screen so you can see it, have one. It's free to use. It tells you how to complete a skills audit as a board, which you might not necessarily do, but once you have the document, and I'm going to share a second screen with you as well around the downloaded skills audit from here, you can actually use that as an individual before you apply to work out what it is you're offering a board, and it looks a little bit like this. So I've skipped to the section that that you would potentially look at, but here what the chair would be asking individual trustees to do is rank their level of expertise against the skills, expertise, knowledge, qualifications of what most boards require around the table. So if you're thinking, well, I'm not sure what I have to offer a board, this is quite a good way of you being able to just map out objectively what you think you offer. Now, my top tip would be to limit yourself to grading at level 1, which is highly experienced, only 2 areas, because let's say you're really good at facilitating meetings and really good at PR and communications. That will give you 2 very core skills to focus on in your application. There is a temptation when applying for boards to say, I can do this, I can do finance and fundraising and HR and income generation, when the reality is you might have dipped into those at some point in your career, but you're not going to be an expert in all of them. So if you can get into the habit of, when doing an exercise like this, grading yourself into the top 2 skills and saying, this is what I think I'm really, really good at, that will help when you're writing your application to join a board. And there's something there around, as you go through that process, you might realise there are skills that boards look for that you wouldn't necessarily think boards were looking for. So I guess have a look at skills audits. You can also Google trustee skills audit. There's loads out there. The Reach one's a good one to start because loads of charities use it. So that's a top tip for you. So back to Colette and Amy, people will be wondering here, we've spoken a lot about jobs and careers, not so much about what you might have done kind of pre-18 or pre-starting your career and entering adulthood, if you like. But does the experience to be around a board have to come from your professional experience? Colette?
No, not at all. No, I would say absolutely not. Any lived experience is of huge value. Again, I sort of go back to saying sort of the ability to question or to look differently at what a charity is doing. Any experience you might have had sort of from school, from sort of part-time work, Saturday work, that kind of thing would be of great value, even just to be able to sort of look at a project plan and consider how you might be able to input into that. Maybe you do have experience of some sort of budgeting of finances, even if it's your own personal finances. Just consider all the different skills that you have in the way that you would if you're applying for a job, and consider sort of looking at job applications as well and seeing how they identify skills that you might need for a board. I think certainly, yeah, it's everything you've done, everything that you've experienced is of value because you bring a new perspective, and certainly often it's your experience if you get to the point of being a trustee, your experience as a trustee then becomes very attractive to the job market as well. I think that's really important to highlight.
You can do it in reverse, that's absolutely right. Amy, anything you want to add?
No, yeah, I just echo that. I think so I was in cadets before, from being the age of 11 or something, until 17, and actually learnt tons of skills there that actually have helped me in later life. I think getting involved in clubs or societies and things like that in education is also really important, because you can do you can learn some of the skills that you need in trusteeship through these different things. So I just encourage anyone that's not kind of in their professional life yet, to kind of just get involved in as many things as possible, and get the experience from them.
And if you are somebody who is embarking on trusteeship, I was a trustee at 18, and then I found when I was entering the job market at 21 after my degree, people found me really unusual at the fact that I'd been a trustee so young. So my tip would also be, whilst a trustee, to do other quite hands-on volunteering so that you can show that you can sit around a table and contribute to discussions and have debates and all the rest of it, but also you've actually done stuff. So you've actually been out fundraising, or you've been out campaigning, or whatever it is that you want to do if you want a career in the charity sector afterwards, because there is a weird suspicion of young people who become trustees, and you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, really, because I would have thought, I would be really attractive to an employer because I've done all these things as a trustee, but actually I found it really hard to find a job to begin with, because people were like, right, you've been around a board table, you've made loads of discussions, you've got a great network, but what have you actually done? And I found that really hard to contend with. So some of you might experience that too. I know other young trustees have done that. What would be your sort of top tip to somebody who found themselves in that position? And either of you can go first, because I'm putting you on the spot.
I don't think I really have the experience to be able to answer that one, but I think it's very similar to student politics. It's the kind of thing of, oh, well, you're only involved in that to actually get up the ladder really quickly. And it's not the case whatsoever. It's normally people that want to make a change. And I think being able to educate people on that, and actually, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and this is why boards need young people, is the important part about it.
Thanks.
I would completely agree with that. And also, I guess, sort of from the perspective now, supporting organisations to actually recruit trustees, and in lots of cases recruit young trustees. A lot of organisations are looking for guidance on how to engage younger people on their boards, so they actually really want to learn from you, and build up their their diversity as well, and not for the sake of being diverse to tick a box, but just to actually bring in new voices. But often you're the person who's going to be able to help them to do that really effectively, and that's what I find really rewarding now, to be supporting the organisations and the individuals and finding a really great match somewhere in the middle, where everyone can learn from each other, but also learn how important it is to support each other as well. So yeah.
And once in the boardroom, because there is something about during the application stage, you can talk about whatever skills you've got and be like, yeah, these are what I want to be able to offer the charity. But once in the boardroom, the dynamic might be very different, and actually they might not bring you in to offer the skill set that you have. And because you are young, they might sort of get you to focus on youth issues. And we have covered this in other webinars, but what would be your tips to somebody who found themselves in a boardroom, an expert on a particular subject area, who was never asked about that subject area? What would you say to them?
I would say I find that whole area really, really interesting. I would certainly sort of encourage you to have a really clear role description that you have agreed with the chair of the board, so that when you join that board, if you were joining because you have brilliant PR skills, or you're joining because you have great strategy skills, that you remember that is why you're there, and embrace the opportunity to join a subcommittee, which means that you get to demonstrate more and more, sort of in a more meaningful way, your expertise. But also just remember that you're there for a purpose. You're giving your own time, and there'll be other experts on the board in the other areas, and you be the person to ask for the support if you want to learn in those other areas. But you've answered a very clear brief on becoming a part of that board. And I think just really be proud of what you're bringing, and make sure that you're respected in that role and not seen as a young person who might, and assumptions made around the fact that you're young, because in any other demographic that wouldn't be acceptable. So I think just be very, very sort of clear about why you're there and look for opportunities to learn, but stick to what it is that you agreed when you took your role at the board.
Great, thanks. Amy, anything to add?
No, yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely something about like showing up. So not just the physical attending the meetings, but actually making the case when you want to say something and actually saying it, which yes can sound really kind of scary in situations, but building relationships with the chair and the people around the table as well. So for example, I during like the lockdown got asked to chair a board for our trustee board, which I've never done. And there's people around that table that have much more experience than me, have like been CEOs of organizations. But the fact is that they've asked me for a reason, and it's understanding like actually they see the worth that I have, and they see like actually I've got something good to say, and they're listening to it. And I think it's that thing of like just keep turning up, keep saying what you need to say, and people will notice it, even if it does take a little bit of time.
Yeah, and in the best of boards, a chair should be asking you after your first meeting or two, how are you finding it? Is there any subject area you're interested in? I do think it relies quite heavily on a strong chair.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences of a good chair or a bad chair?
I think both the chairs so the governing body and the trustee board I'm on now have both been really good, and really see the worth of so obviously in the governing body it was slightly different, so I was there to be that young person representing the students, but they would make sure like they gave me the opportunity to ask questions, and they weren't like, it wasn't like, oh, that question is not about students, you can't ask that, but that kind of gave me the space to grow and to make mistakes and things like that. And I think in the trustee board at VAS it's very much the same, and our chair at the end of every meeting kind of does a reflection and asks people how they thought the meeting went, what could have been improved, and especially like today, so he said, let's see how it goes. If something doesn't go, if it's not going right and it's not working for you, just flag it and we'll fix it, and we'll make sure it works for people. And I think for a chair to be able to kind of step back and say, yeah, I can make mistakes and that's fine, call me out on it and we'll fix it, is really important.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to bring in Anthony Wheeler now, who's got a question. So I'm just going to unmute you, Anthony, or try to unmute you. It unmuted you, then remuted you. Hang on, there we go. You can also start your video if you want to. And when asking the question, can you direct tell them which order to answer it, just to make it a bit smoother.
That's right. I think maybe we'll start with Colette then, if that's okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking about, say a board has recruited a young person or a first-time trustee. Yep. What can the board do to develop the skills of that young person or that first-time trustee?
I think it's a really good question. I think it'd be very important that like the chair, whoever it is who's maybe being paired up with that young trustee, actually has a really sort of open conversation about what they really want to get out of it, whether it's a particular skill, whether it's a particular experience or new network, and have regular conversations. It might even be that if breaks are built into board meetings to allow that first-time trustee to ask questions in sort of real time to get the feel for what this new jargon is and all of those sorts of things. I think just having that open conversation where you feel able to also say, hang on, I feel like I'm being pulled into something that I didn't agree to, or say, actually, I've got more to say on this, but I don't have the confidence to raise my hand in the meeting. I think just being open to have that conversation, and the word buddy, I wish there was a better word for it, but to have somebody there who was there just for you, and not, I said it earlier, not just because you're a young trustee, but because you're a new trustee. And you can be a very experienced trustee somewhere else, but joining a new board is as nerve-wracking as it is for anyone who's been a trustee sort of their whole career. So I think having somebody who is there for you, and I think that's something you could ask your chair for if it isn't offered to you when you first join. So just be open about what you need, because you're giving your time and your expertise.
That's great. Anthony, did you want to bring in Amy? I think I have to unmute you again. Hang on, let me try. Yeah, there you go.
Maybe for Amy, maybe you could talk about how the chair or your board helped to develop your skills once you'd become a trustee. Did you kind of have an appraisal process or anything like that, development plan or anything?
So I don't think I've had anything like that, as in like nothing like formal like that or anything. But I think so going through my kind of trustee journey with it, there's been opportunities to kind of get involved in other things, and it's kind of, do you know, when they have so the subcommittees is actually normally okay, would anyone else like to join this, even if it's just to learn, and like our board has that opportunity. So I went to a working group, and it wasn't even to like give any input on anything because I didn't have a clue on it. Was on finance, so I didn't have a clue on it, but I was like, I think it really helped me to learn to come to this, and they were like, yep, sure, no problem. And actually, like, it was really helpful. I think as well, so the oversight board that I'm now chairing, my chair is on that board, so he's there, and he's, after each meeting, he's like, how did that go? Oh my goodness, how did that go? How did you feel? And like, here are the things that you could do to kind of make it smoother if you feel it's not going smooth enough, or like, these are the different things that you're doing well. And I think, yeah, so that's been really helpful. Does that answer that?
Yeah, no, that was really interesting. I realised my camera's off. I was nodding along vigorously. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. And next we have a question from Emily.
Hi, I've got two questions. So I'll ask one to Colette first, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So what questions are likely to, that like trustee boards likely to ask you if you have an interview?
Oh, they'll want to know about your motivation, about the skills that you would bring. It might be a question they would ask you, but if they don't, make sure you ask them when meetings take place and how much time they expect you to contribute as a trustee between meetings as well. Something that I make sure I can share with potential trustees in my current role at Community Foundation is about how easy it is to access venues by public transport, and when organisations meet rurally, that I encourage them to think about meeting more centrally. And so I think they should be asking you or letting you know exactly what they expect from you in the role. But if they don't, I think it's worth sort of having those questions ready for them. So maybe to reverse your question, it would be what are the hard skills that they need from you? What experience would they like to know about? And how practical is it going to be a trustee at that organisation?
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have is for Amy. Where are the best places to look for these positions?
Oh, so we covered this a couple of weeks ago. So have a look on the YouTube stuff, but there's a bunch of different websites. So you can find ones, I can't remember the names of any of them. Leon, can you help?
Yeah, I've just posted in the chat as well a link to the webinar from a couple of weeks ago, where I did a bit of screen sharing around how to find the roles. But the sort of, if I was to give you a quick whistle-stop tour, the 2 or 3 places I would say to look are the Young Trustees Movement's Mighty Network site. If you're not already part of it, then join it. And if you just Google Young Trustees Movement in Google, it will come up. Reach Volunteering is a really good one to look at because they offer a free advertising service for trusteeships. They do also offer charities the option to upgrade the advertisement if they want to. So it's worth having a look at there because that will tell you a fair amount about an organisation in itself. On the webinar that I hosted a couple of weeks ago, I showed people how to do a bit of background research on the organisation by entering the charity number or charity name into the Charity Commission's website, where you can see who other trustees are. So you might be able to reach out on LinkedIn or find them on Twitter or whatever. You can download accounts and see the financial history. You can also see whether they file their accounts on time. So it's about doing your diligence and checking out that an organisation is kind of, you know, on the right side of everything, and it is one that you should apply to. You could look at doit.org. Again, that is volunteering and trustee opportunities searched by postcode. So if you are currently locked down in a different area from where you would live if you're studying or working or whatever it is that you're doing, you can actually apply for things back wherever you want to be. So back in your hometown or back in your city of study or work. And also now, because of the virus, there has been an increase in organisations working remotely, a vast increase. So most organisations now have suddenly switched their mindset to, it doesn't matter where you're based, you'll be able to engage with us. You can also look at charity job. Lots of trusteeships are advertised there for free, and on guardian jobs actually, but those guardian jobs you have to pay for. So again, it's only a particular type of charity that is on there. Check out your local volunteering centre as well. They often have local infrastructure bodies that will advertise for roles. And trust me, once you start your research, you'll go into a rabbit Wren and Warren of being able to kind of find different platforms where organisations advertise. But that's my starter for 10. I would advise you to read our posts on the Young Trustees Hub, but also watch that webinar, because we guide you through the process a little bit. And in the future, we'll probably do a more structured webinar, which is just on how to find these roles. Now, Dan Laws, before I bring Dan Laws in, who's got a question, Colette, Amy, any other places you would advise looking at for trustee roles that I didn't cover in that quick 2-minute session?
I think it was when you said the infrastructure organisations, that was exactly what I would have said. So in the North East region, we've got an umbrella body, VON, and also Connected Voice and Voda, and lots of different organisations. And also the actual charities website itself. If you have a real interest in a particular charity, do keep looking at their mailing list, look at their newsletters to see when they're advertising posts. And don't be afraid of approaching them to see if they are considering recruiting at some point in the future as well. Just make yourself known to them. I think that's always really valuable too.
Right. Amy, anything else you want to add to that, babe?
No, I just echo. So this sounds really bad that I forgot it, but like, so VAS, the organisation I'm a trustee for, they have a volunteer centre and they advertise roles like that. And so most areas will have something similar to a voluntary action organisation, and they'll have volunteer centre websites that have all that on it. And you can click trustee and they'll come up.
And during November every year is Trustees Week, and Trustees Week is something that was coordinated by the Charity Commission. Have a look on their website. I'll quickly share my screen now so you know what you're looking for, because there is an entire, if you press the button Become a Trustee, it will then guide you through where to look and all the places that charities advertise their trustee roles. There you go. Here's some of the ones that I said. So doit.org's trustee finder. Getting on board, also do circulate a list of opportunities to people too. These are all free, or most of them are free as a applicant, but there's a whole list of places to look. So lots of this work has been done before, but Trustees Week generally is a really good time to get engaged on social media. Just follow the hashtag, because loads of organisations start tweeting their adverts. Like, a lot of them actually wait until November because they know there's a lot of activity going on there. So I think we've spoken enough to answer Emily's question and repeated some of what we've discussed in previous ones. But Dan, I'm going to ask you to bring your question to them both, please.
Hi everyone. No, thank you so much. It's been such a useful session. So my question regards recruitment and skills. So as you probably know, when trustee boards are recruiting, what I've often seen is we're looking for a trustee who is particularly skilled in a certain area. Now I think that might put off quite a lot of young people, because how do you determine yourself whether or not you are skilled in that area? So for example, myself, I'm chief executive of a youth-led organisation, which means I've got decent overarching sort of skills. But whether, if you'd ask me if I'm extremely well-rounded in safeguarding or fundraising, I'd probably say not really. So I wondered, Colette, if you have any advice on that. How can you, as a young person, determine whether or not you have skills in that? And Amy, have you experienced that yourself? If you had any advice?
Yeah. I would say that maybe having somebody who you could bounce ideas off. Is there a sort of a friend or a colleague who you could speak to and say, what do you think my sort of greatest skills are, and that sort of thing? That might be useful, just to have someone else's perspective. It's often difficult to say, just sort of to think, oh, that I'm really brilliant at this. It's maybe easier to hear from somebody else. And certainly in my role at Community Foundation, I think people value the fact that I'm in the middle of the relationship between the trustee and the organisation, and so I'm actually able to do that conversation with people interested in becoming a trustee, and that's the bit that I love, like finding what that person's real talent is, to see sort of where they're going to be best fitted within a charity. And similarly, the infrastructure organisations, the volunteer centres, they can provide that role as well, just to have that conversation with you to help to identify your skills without you thinking, but I'm not sure if this is what I'm really great at. So just ask someone that you really trust to help you to identify your skills, or go to a professional organisation who would help you to work through that. And just don't be coy about what you know that you're great at. Be very confident. You're unusual in being a younger person applying for a trustee role. So I think just really sort of be proud of that, and be confident in what you feel you bring.
That's great. Also, Dan, I would add that they might say they want somebody with X skill, and you might think, oh, I don't think I'm an expert at that. I have a mid-ranking understanding of that. But I would say young trustees typically are change makers. So it's worth applying and saying and being upfront in the cover letter or on the application form or whatever it is they ask you to do. Look, I don't think I quite bring you the level of skills you want for this particular advert, but I do offer all of this. Would I still be of interest to you? If you can find contact details of somebody to have a chat to before you apply, even better, because then you're not wasting your time. Often adverts will say, if you want to chat with our chair or with our head of governance or whatever, then please contact. Always, always, always take up the opportunity to speak to somebody if you can. Just think logically about this. They are probably going to be involved in shortlisting. They are probably going to say, I remember that person. I had a 20-minute chat with them and they were absolutely excellent over the phone and I got a really good impression and I would really like to shortlist them, because I find it easier to show off in the interview room than on paper. So really all you're trying to do is get to interviews so that you can articulate who you are, what you believe in, what skills you offer and what you think you can do for that charity. And remember to match it to the ambition of the organisation. So if they say we want to grow in the next 5 years and you're a young entrepreneur, that's a perfect skill set and skills match, even though the advert might not say that's specifically what they want at that time. I think it's always worth asking, because the worst they can do is say no and not shortlist you. Amy, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I've felt like victim to that as well. So when I was looking for trustee positions, there was a place that I really wanted to apply for, and actually really passionate about the cause of the charity, and it said it wanted digital marketing skills. And at that point I was like, I haven't got that, like, no. So actually then I thought, right, well, if I don't have that skill, I need to work on that and look at organisations that maybe aren't looking for specific skills. So when I applied for VAS, they didn't say we're looking for this skill, this skill, this skill. They said we're looking for people that represent a wide range of, so they were looking mainly to look at diversifying their board. And so like joining the board, I could tell why. But actually, like, it was really good and really important for them to do that as well. So I think there are trusteeships out there that aren't looking for specific skills, and actually like taking the time to build on some of those skills. So there's websites that you can go and learn more about stuff. So I've done that about digital marketing and social media and all that kind of stuff. Because even though I'm a young person, like, I've had to learn social media. Like, it's not a given that we're good at that. But yeah.
I'm very firmly in millennial rather than Gen Z. So I hear you. I learned social media too. Often, like people say, millennials did, Gen Z do. But anyway, there's a question I want to ask, because you've just highlighted a point about learning. So as a young trustee, or as a trustee generally, and this is going to take us over the time ever so slightly, how do I raise the areas of learning for me without identifying myself as someone that doesn't know as much as others? How can I make sure that as a young trustee, I'm not meeting people's expectations, putting myself out on a limb and saying, I don't know about that? How would you recommend doing it? And start with Colette, because Amy looks like she's thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point to sort of consider. I think the important thing is that you are bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge to the board. You're doing the organisation a favour, actually. Anything that it obviously is hugely beneficial to you as an individual, but you are offering your time and your expertise to that organisation. I think that they should really sort of be really impressed with the fact that you're able to say what you'd like to know more about, and it's their obligation to you to support you to develop in those areas. And if it's an area they can't help you develop in, then possibly look to a different opportunity. But basically, just be frank, and if you have a good chair and if you have a buddy on the board, they're the people to go to, and it's their obligation to give you a rewarding experience in return for all of the time and expertise you're bringing to them. And I think actually it would probably be quite a relief to some people to hear somebody else asking whether they do it privately or publicly, because everyone has areas where they feel a bit vulnerable, or that like they should be better because they're on a board. And so yeah, I would absolutely say just be honest in a way that you feel comfortable asking the question.
The easiest way to win friends on a board is say, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep,
can we have
absolutely.
a bit more info on that? Yeah. Amy, what would you add?
No, yeah, I think it's just been taken out of my mouth there. But yeah, I think there's two ways to like talking to your chair, if you've got that relationship, or someone around that, even like the chief exec. So I know if I can go to my chief exec and say, actually, the board meeting that we had there, I was lost on this bit. Can we look at getting some training on that? Or like if you've got the confidence to literally just say it in the meeting. And actually, I think there will be a sigh of relief around there. We often openly talk about how some of our trustees don't have any idea on finance or things like that, and everyone's like, oh no, yeah, it'd be really good to have a session on that, can we do that? And I think it's really important to be able to say that in a way that actually takes the power back and isn't I don't get this, I'm really sorry, but actually like, I think this is a point that we all can improve on. Can we do something about it?
Definitely.
Okay, so we're out of time, but let me ask you this question, this final question, which is there anything you would say to people watching, or people who might find this on YouTube and watch it, that you want to say to them, that the questions I've asked and the participants have asked that haven't given you the opportunity to say what you need to say? Colette, anything from you?
Yes, I think, so being completely frank, I have never regretted doing something I've been a little bit scared of. And certainly the very first time I became a trustee, I asked I've said this to Leon before, I asked, what is a trustee? I saw an advert for trustees. I didn't know what a trustee was, because from a university background, we talked about executive committees. Once I found out, I thought, where's this been all my life? So basically, I've never regretted saying yes, and I've learned along the way, and sometimes my confidence has come from actually taking that role and thinking, oh crikey, I've just joined a subcommittee, oh, I've said I'm going to be chair. So I would just say, be ambitious, and if you're part of a really great charity, they'll offer you the support that you need if that is your ambition to take that next step.
Great, I love that, thank you. Amy, anything?
No, yeah, I think I'd just echo that, be ambitious, I think is the key point there.
Great, and that is a wrap from us. So thank you, Colette and Amy, for joining us for the last 45 minutes to talk about how to showcase your skills about being a trustee, even though you've never been a trustee. Next week, folks, we're doing something slightly different. So we are pausing our normal agenda and inviting you to come and tell us what you would like future webinars to be on. So we realise that the movement has been sort of active and proactive for the last couple of weeks and months, but we haven't actually seen many of you behind your grey Zoom screens. So do join us, same time, same place next week. You'll see all the advertising, and come prepared with the questions or the ideas of sessions that you want us to do. And in fact, if you've got something to show off, or a set of skills or something you've done in the past, then maybe we can put you in the hot seat. Other than that, that leaves me to say thank you to both Amy and Colette for spending some time with me. Thank you all for coming and for participating, and hopefully see you next week. Have a lovely evening and weekend when it gets here, and the close of play tomorrow. Thanks.